We are continuing on in the series as we have discussed the NFC South and the NFC East already. Today's video will be about the NFC North, which of course is home to players like Aaron Rodgers, Harrison Smith, Khalil Mack, and Matt Stafford. There are a lot of stars in this division, from Devontae Adams to Danielle Hunter, and we'll discuss all of these guys, what to expect of their teams, and the division's postseason expectations. But before we get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now let's begin. Like we have with the other divisions, we start off with the worst team from last year and go forward based on the team's record from 2019, which means we start today's video off with the Detroit Lions. They had a rough 2019 after quarterback Matt Stafford went down as they didn't win a game following his injury. They started out 3-3-1 with Stafford under center and ultimately finished 3-12-1 and ended up drafting in the top 5 of the NFL draft. They had a very good draft as not only did they get the best corner in Jeff Okudah, they also selected running back DeAndre Swift, edge rusher Julian Okwara, and guard Jonah Jackson out of Ohio State. They had a phenomenal draft, and Okudah will be a very good corner very soon. It will take him a little bit of time to adjust to the physicality and speed of the NFL, but Okudah was the highest drafted corner in over a decade for a reason. The Lions have to be excited about DeAndre Swift to pair with third-year running back Kerryon Johnson, who averaged over 5 yards per carry in his rookie season back in 2018, and he will play this season at just 23 years old. Swift averaged over 6 yards per carry at Georgia, and while that shouldn't be expected to translate to the NFL as no running back has ever done that, he had 20 rushing touchdowns during his time at Georgia, and the Lions and Matt Stafford for that matter have to be excited to get a player of his caliber in the offense. Now looking at the season ahead of them, they automatically have 3 tough games every year, as they play at Chicago, at Green Bay, and at Minnesota. But aside from those games, they play at Arizona, home against New Orleans, and at Tennessee. If they can go 6-2 at home, which is very hard with the schedule they have, and go even 3-5 or 4-4 on the road, this could be a playoff team. They play, aside from the division games, at Carolina, at Atlanta, at Jacksonville, and as mentioned, at Tennessee and at Arizona. That's not too hard of a road schedule, and if Matt Stafford has legitimate help in 2020, the playoffs aren't out of the question for them, especially with the 7-seeded playoff bracket. Remember, Stafford was on pace last year for 5,000 yards and 38 passing touchdowns, which is absurd. They also have the 2019 leader in receiving touchdowns in Kenny Golladay, who should again have a good year. Golladay remains as one of the most underrated receivers in all of football, and will play a huge part in the Lions' success in 2020. If I had to predict a record for this team in 2020, assuming everyone stays healthy and they don't have to play quarterback David Blau, I would predict this team to win anywhere from 7 to 9 games. Now we head to the Windy City to discuss the Chicago Bears. While they did acquire Khalil Mack a few years ago, that came at a cost, so inevitably they did not have a first-round pick this year. They did select the best tight end in the draft though in Cole Kmet, and got solid corner in the second round in Jalen Johnson. Aside from those picks and wide receiver Darnell Mooney from Tulane, their draft wasn't the best. It should also be noted that they traded a 4th-round pick for quarterback Nick Foles, so you could say Nick was their 4th-round selection. And while we're on the topic of Foles, I think it's time to discuss how he will do as a Bear. Looking at his career, he has had the most success by far as an Eagle, and hasn't been good anywhere else. As an Eagle, Foles has a record of 21-11, a Super Bowl title, and had a 27 touchdown to 2 interception season back in 2013. However, as a member as any other team, he has a record of just 5-11 and has thrown just 13 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. There's a clear difference, and who's to say it won't continue in Chicago? He will be competing with Mitch Trubisky for the starting job, and if he can't win that, then Foles for the rest of his career will more than likely be a clipboard holder wherever he goes. Now we look ahead to the 2020 season and how they'll do, and because of the uncertainty surrounding the quarterback position, I don't think the Bears will do that good in 2020 with whichever one they decide to start. Their schedule isn't too bad, but with mediocrity or even poor play at the most important position in sports, I can't see them doing too well in 2020. Aside from Allen Robinson, their receivers are not good, and their running back situation isn't the best either. I think this team is anywhere from 5 to 8 wins, and in typical Bears fashion, they'll probably beat the Packers in Green Bay, or at the least play them very tight and get blown out by Jacksonville or somebody of that nature later in the year. I think it has the potential to be a very long year in Chicago, and they could be back to the drawing boards in 2021. We head north to Minneapolis now, and the Vikings did a lot this offseason to say the least. They traded wide receiver Stephon Diggs to the Bills in a draft haul, and essentially replaced him with LSU wide receiver Justin Jefferson. They also cut corner Xavier Rhodes and defensive tackle Linval Joseph, while corners Trey Trey Waynes and Mackenzie Alexander both left in free agency. They had a very, very busy offseason. The Vikings also selected corner Jeff Gladney in the first round, and him and third-round corner Cameron Dantzler should both have major impacts in their rookie season. They had a great draft, and general manager Rick Spielman came out of draft weekend as a huge winner. They had a big draft day steal in the 7th round with the selection of defensive lineman Kenny Willekes out of Michigan State. Now, taking a look at their schedule, they open up and have a huge game immediately with the biggest division rival, the Green Bay Packers. It doesn't get much easier after that as they go to Indy and then come home to play the Titans, who went to the AFC Championship game just last year. The rookies that play are going to have to step up and into their roles and quickly in order for the team to do well, especially the corners. The team will of course return big-name defensive stars Harrison Smith, Danielle Hunter, and 2019 first-team All-Pro Eric Kendricks. On the offensive side of the ball will be Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, CJ Ham, Adam Thielen, and Kyle Rudolph. They have a very good offense, and there's no reason Dalvin Cook can't go for 1,800 or more total yards this year. The Vikings have a very good roster, and I feel like their season and the Packers season 2 for that matter will be displayed in week 1. If either team comes out and is atrocious, then I think they'll be in for a very long year. The Vikings will of course be counting on franchise quarterback Kirk Cousins and players like Adam Thielen, who is expected to get back over 1,000 yards after an injury-plagued 2019. It will also be fun to track the progression of second-year tight end Irv Smith, as tight ends usually take a few years to get accustomed to the league, so inevitably he didn't have a great rookie year statistically. I also don't doubt the emergence of Alexander Mattison in 2020, and for those that don't know who he is, he's Dalvin Cook's backup. Mike Zimmer has stated time and time again he wants to run the ball more, and Dalvin simply can't take all of the carries, which would lead to Mattison playing more in year number 2 than he did in year number 1. I can't wait for that game, but for the purpose of this video, I think the Vikings are going to be in the 9-12 win range for the 2020 season. Now on to Green Bay, who didn't have a great offseason, and that's putting it nice. They had a horrendous draft as they're a team who was coming off of an NFC Championship game appearance. One would logically think if they were a game away from the Super Bowl that they would load up and go all out for one last postseason run to get Aaron a second ring, as he is 36 years old. No matter what Aaron says, he's not playing till 45 or even 43 for that matter. It's just not a reality. And while we're on Aaron, he's starting to decline physically, it's clear in his play, and he's not the player he was a few years ago. And with that being said, the Packers didn't do much at all to help him for one last run. They can't expect Aaron Jones to rush for 16 touchdowns every year and for them to go 8-1 in one-score games. It's just not a reality for them or for anybody. A regression is coming as 7 of their wins came against quarterbacks like Mitch Trubisky, David Blau, Matt Moore, Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, and Kyle Allen. With the combination of a franchise quarterback getting a year older, a running back that simply can't sustain the elite level he played at last year, and a horrendous draft, I don't see any way the Packers maintain what they did in 2019. 13-3 can't be expected every year either, don't get me wrong, but there's honestly no way I see them winning the division. Now let's take a look at the Packers' 2020 schedule, and they play a first-place schedule, so they will be challenged a lot more this year than they were last. They have a 4-game stretch this year coming off of the bye, with these 4 games being in 18 days, and that is at Tampa, at Houston, home against Minnesota, and at San Francisco on Thursday night. That is undoubtedly their hardest 4-game stretch of the season, and it wouldn't surprise me if they go 1-3 during that stretch. I don't think they go 0-4, don't get me wrong, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they do. Playing a division rival is hard enough, but on 3 days rest, they go to San Francisco, which is over 2,000 miles away from them, and get to play the team that absolutely mauled them on primetime TV twice last year. As if that's not bad enough for them, they have a very early bye in week 5, and with their stadium being outside, I honestly think home games late in the year don't have as big of an impact as one would think. Remember, NFL players typically aren't from the area that they play in, and aren't typically hyped up to play in 0 or minus 10 degree temperatures, like in week 16 when they played Derrick Henry and the Titans on Sunday night just 2 days after Christmas. That game will be awful for the Packers defenders, as they'll have to stop a 250-pound power running back in the frigid temperatures. The Packers' schedule isn't easy by any means, and I think their season this year will be far less exciting for the fans in 2020 than it was in 2019. As for how many wins they have, I think they'll be in the 9-11 range for this season. The first half of their schedule is extremely difficult, and we'll see what they're made of fairly early. And that's all I have for today's video. If you're still watching, I appreciate the time out of your day. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day. Skol Vikings!